Well, good afternoon. Welcome to the Union County Board of Commissioners regular meeting for Monday, May 18. And as usual, we'll begin our meeting with the invocation led this evening by Chairman Rate, Vice Chairman Rate.
Thank you. Bow your heads with me if you would. Our most gracious Heavenly Father, I come to you today a sinner saved by grace, and I have never been as confused as I have been in the last days through this pandemic that we're going through. But I know you, as it says in the book of Isaiah, you know all things before they happen and the outcome of it. I trust in you. I trust in our people. I ask that you give us guidance as we try to make decisions for our precious county. We ask that you bless all and keep safe all law enforcement, fire, nurses, EMTs, everybody that serves the public. We realize what a special kind of soul it takes to do that, and we just ask that you put your providence on all of this. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Take this opportunity to recognize some of our employees who have accomplished tenure with the county, and start with those 5-year recipients. We have Becky Hatley with Building Code Enforcement, Bailey Simpson in General Services, Brandy Grant, Jessica Hines, and Patrick Tyson with the Sheriff's Office, Carla Sowells with Human Services Business Ops. Then our 15-year employees, we have Dale Louder with the Health Department and Thomas Louisa with the Sheriff's Office. We have some May retirements. We have Wayne Miller in the Register of Deeds Office with 6 years, and Chris Michelson, the library, with 17 years. We thank these employees for their service and wish them continued success. Our next item is public hearing, opportunity for hearing by claimant regarding request for refund of excise tax paid to the Register of Deeds Office. Is anyone present who wishes to comment from Costner Laws? If not, we will move on to informal comments. I'm getting the nod. We have none. So we'll go to our next item, which is the additions, deletions, and adoption of the agenda. Let me take the opportunity to add and delete a couple of items from consent. First is a resolution for the sale of county property to the town of Waxhaw. We'll add that to the consent agenda. And delete item 9 from consent, which is the Tark Hill Force Main Replacement Project at staff's request.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I'd also like to move item 22, fire tax, and item number 25, condemnations, to the regular agenda for discussion.
I'd like to call a vote on that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Any other additions or deletions? We have a request to vote on the agenda.
I'll pull in anything off.
All in favor of the agenda as amended? The agenda as amended. Say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. You said item 26? Is that right?
No, sir. Item 22. and
22, I got 22. What was the other one?
And 25.
25. All right. make things easy, we'll put them both under old business since we have none. I hear a motion to approve consent.
So moved.
It is as amended. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Takes us to old business. Item 22, fire tax. Commissioner Rushing.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. In this, I appreciate the work that you've done, Patrick, and appreciate the work all our staff's done. I just have an issue with it from, in our side of the county, the concerns are of any change, any addition of people, that it's going to add a undue burden. So with that, that's just my biggest concern with it, is the amount that personnel, new trucks, whatever, can add to that bill very quickly. So I'm not going to support that item.
Okay. The motion would be to, are you making a motion to,
No,
Not
just,
approve item
that's
22?
just my discussion on it.
okay?
And anybody's welcome to make the motion when they're ready.
I will move that we adopt resolutions to define tax-supported fire and rescue service districts and to abolish the existing fee-supported fire districts for the following service districts: Allen Crossroads, Bakers, Beaver Lane, Fairview, Griffith Road, Jackson, Lanes Creek, New Salem, Providence, Sandy Ridge, Stack Road, Unionville, and Wingate, and adopt a resolution to define tax-supported Hemi Bridge Fire and Rescue Service District pursuant to the County Service District Act. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Thank you. Thank you, Patrick. Takes us to item 25, was it? Stoney?
Yes, sir, thank you. Mark, we still are not in possession of the FERC permit, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission permit for the
No,
Yadkin
sir,
project?
we have not heard from FERC on the status of the permit.
Okay. Again, I'm not going to be voting in support of this item.
I would like to say something to that.
Do we have a motion and then have a discussion?
Yes.
Would you like to make the motion?
I thought we had the discussion and then the vote, but whatever you
I'll make
say.
a motion, we adopt the resolution authorizing condemnation to acquire certain property or entity property for a temporary construction easement, permanent utility easement.
Thank you,
Commissioner
Frank.
Ray. Now discussion. Commissioner Ray.
This thing was started long before I came on the board. We bought lots, we bought a pump station site at Lake Tillery while you were, I believe, chairman, right? And to think that we're gonna magically get the water from there to the water farm or water treatment plant without having to cross property, Stoney, I just don't understand. I mean, we are going to try to be as fair to the people as we can. Wherever we bring water into this county, we're gonna have to condemn property, whether it comes up 601 South or comes from Norwood. And so I think this is just politics, but we all play the game, so that's my discussion on it.
Commissioner Rush. Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Rate, Vice Chairman Rate, I think if you had seen some of my discussions from previous meetings throughout the last several years, I've been pretty plain and public that I was against the line that goes under Unionville over to Indian Trail to transfer the total amount of water that we would receive from the Yadkin Project over to that part of the county. I've been in meetings with towns, I've been in meetings with other political leaders where I've said that over and over and consistently. The things that I have concerns with is looking at the reporting that we're going to have to do. We have to report that we have grown at a rate that we predicted 6-7 years ago. If we don't grow at that rate, it says the Environmental Management Commission with the state of North Carolina shall take away some of our IBT, that they can take it back. So what my concerns are is with a lot of these programs is after seeing this paperwork, after looking and reading, You know, my concern is that we put $904 million worth of infrastructure in, and then we're told, thank you for replacing Mecklenburg County's water, the gallons that we get from them, and then we don't have any after that for Union County. So, and that's what we're doing. We're replacing on the first phase, we're replacing water that Mecklenburg County has set aside for us now in Lancaster. And then in the next phase, when we do our first report, after the first day we drain water from that lake, we have to start reporting to the Environmental Management Commission. And when we make that report, we are not growing in the rate that we predicted that we would grow in, especially in the Rocky River Basin. So I've got some concerns with it. I think that a lot of people in the community have concerns with it. And the fact that we don't even have the necessary permitting to withdraw water from the lake as of yet, why we have to do this in a sped up fashion and take land from people. I've been in meetings where we voted to condemn property for one reason or another. I've been pretty plain I'm against it. A lot of other members on this board, I don't have any problem with saying that, you know, and you've had problems with people taking land. You know, we've been a pretty consistent board of not wanting to do that. It just seems like we're trying to rush things through for some reason. And so it's not politics, it's concerns that I've had and expressed publicly and openly for many years. And I just didn't want to vote for it on a consent agenda when I have the opportunity to say, no, I'm not really ready for this. You know, we've got some more condemnations coming up that we're going to be discussing for other issues. And I think that other members of this board have expressed concerns about those, especially dealing with the West Fork of 12 Mile Creek. You know, if you have a problem with the condemnation, I'm glad that this board voted to take this off. I appreciate that opportunity to say no without saying no to a lot of other good things in the consent agenda.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
past 5 years, I worked with Stoney on this, and I agree, the condemnation is not something that we take very lightly. The Yadkin Project has never said it was going to go to the west side. Yeah, it's going to have a tie-in, but that's allowing us to have backup if we lose the Catawba. The water is for the section of the county north and east. There's never been anything about, you know, there was a lot of propaganda that was put out, fake news as I heard it called, that the water is just for the people in the west and the developers, and it could be nothing further from the truth. And we've all known that. This county, after we get past this pandemic, I think it's going to continue to grow. We've got a place that people want to be. And we're not going to have the sufficient water if we don't move forward with this project. It's been in the work. You know, I disagree that we're racing to it. I think it's been in the project since 2004. And permits, I mean, there's a lot of things that aren't happening during this pandemic, so we'd love to see the last permit come in, but I feel confident it will come in. But we don't need to deceive people and giving them bad information, and that's my concern.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mark, I need to ask, I guess, you some questions so that all the board's on the same page with this. The project that we're doing, how many millions of gallons of water do we receive now from Lancaster and Mecklenburg counties?
Mr. Rushing, I don't have that specific number in front of me.
We've got allocated maybe 7 to 10 million gallons that we could use from Mecklenburg County and from Lancaster County that we're borrowing, for lack of a better word.
I think between what we're getting from on contract over and above our 20 million gallon out of the Catawba from Lancaster County, and then what we get from Mecklenburg County, it's somewhere between 6 and 9 MGD on a on-demand, as-needed basis, and generally that's on our high-demand days.
Right. On average, we use about 15 million gallons a day in Union County on an average day.
This time of year, a little bit less than that, but I think when you average it out over the entire year, it's probably around that.
And so the first stage, when we
Now,
get the-
I'm giving you these numbers. I
You
don't
are.
have them in front of me. This
I
is
understand, I
just- okay,
understand.
all right,
We've-
okay.
in the first stage of this project, what we're doing is we're bringing in water that's going to basically take the place of that 9 million gallons of water that we currently have allocated to use on an emergency day basis from Mecklenburg and Lancaster counties. So, again, the concern that I have with the whole project now, after reading the documentation from the Environmental Management Commission, which our consultants agreed to, the wording is very strict. When the legal term "shall" is used in a document, that's a strong word. And in that document, it says if we're not meeting our growth projections, then they shall look at other places to put that water. And again, I would hate that we got 7 to 10 million gallons of water allocated and had the rest of it taken away from us. So there's just some concerns I have there, and I think that this board could send a letter and ask a question of the Environmental Management Commission, making sure to clarify that, especially with the pandemic and the other issues going on. But not just that, the growth rate that we have, the West Fork 12 Mile Creek that we're going to be talking about in July in a work session. If we don't do that and we're growing at a slower rate, then that comes back to haunt us, not this year, not next year, but 5 years from now. The first day we do that project report, we have to do a quarterly report to the Environmental Management Commission. And the first day we do that is the first, when we start draining water from the lake, that's when we know. And that's a little bit too late after we put hundreds of millions of dollars worth of infrastructure in the ground. And as for the sewer plant that we're talking about, and I know that was bandied about with fake news, Mr. Manager, when are we going to have to site the land and purchase the land for that if we decide to do a 12 or Lower Crooked Creek sewer plant?
When are we going?
When is that on schedule to site that plant?
We are actively working on siting, or at least identifying sites for that plant right now.
So
And so
when will
the
this
board,
board-
the board could expect to see a recommendation from staff on siting that plant sometime this fall.
So this year?
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
I would like to add that you have to have a known location before you do the final environmental impact study. So you have to own the land. The state wants to know where the site's going to be before you do the environmental impact.
So we'll be purchasing the land for the
Purchasing
sewer
the
plant
land.
this fall?
Yes.
Okay.
I would think it would be sometime this fall.
So with that, I know I've heard myself and one other commissioner at least say that they were not in favor of that. So, again, there's some concerns there. And I think a letter asking the Environmental Management Commission exactly what they're going to hold us to in that letter that was sent to them and that document is prudent, proper. It's not a political action. It's a safeguard for, again, 4, 5, 6 years from now when we start drawing water from the lake. If we get the permits to do that, are they going to take it away from us day one? Because if they do, the Union County ratepayers have paid a massive amount of continued rates only to give back the commitments and the water that we've contracted with Mecklenburg County and Lancaster County for. And I think if you talk about being angry, what you're saying, having that backup, having something that we can tap into if we have an E. coli or if we have some other kind of problem is absolutely important, and water is very important. But if we can't benefit from the money we spend, other than just to allow continued growth today, it's going to be a problem for that board and at that time. And it may not be any of us. It may be a whole new board, but it will be a problem for them at that time. So that's the concerns. And I hope that you all understand it. This is not a grandstand. It's not a game play. is something that I've got some serious, legitimate concerns about. And just would like to see us at maybe our next meeting, send that letter and ask, are we going to lose any IBT if our growth projections don't match what was done 7 years ago, 6 years ago, however long it was ago? And I think that hopefully they would come back and say, no, we understand the problems, we understand the economy, we understand there's issues, but in that document, it says shall, they shall. And that's a strong legal term to be hoping that they don't change their mind at that point.
Mr. Chair, if I could add, just for point of clarification, the siting of the Lower Crooked Creek plant, that project is in your Public Works CIP that the board adopted, and we're working on that plan on going forward based on that CIP. When that recommendation comes back, or a request to make purchase, the board certainly can choose to do what it will at that time, but staff is working based on the direction and understanding that we have right now. Just want to clarify that. We're not,
CIP approved?
back in, Brian, that was in November? December, right after the November workshop. Yes, sir.
Mr. Ray?
Stoney, I was with you on some of this stuff. I think the one thing that you're leaving out when you say all this is the cost of our water from Mecklenburg, $3.50 a thousand. You're aware of that, aren't you?
We pay that if we use it. We do pay a lease on that water.
Yeah, but when we take over, if we take over the Marshville system and it becomes part of the Union County, Yadkin can furnish that. It can furnish Wingate. The part, and Charlotte Mecklenburg, because Mr. Williams pointed it out, they have an interbasin transfer where they can put water from Catawba into the Yadkin and Rocky River basins. So we could replace that water too. And that can be up to 6-7 million gallons a day. So I just think it gives us a lot of options, and the fact that nobody will acknowledge how many $1 million this county had already plowed into Yadkin County before it came down to having to vote the rate increase. And if we go with Mecklenburg County at $3.50 a thousand and scrap Yadkin, we'd have to have another rate increase because it wouldn't cover it.
Commissioner Rushing?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Ray, what I'm telling you is that if the whole, I guess the selling point of Yadkin was the 20+ million gallons per day that we would get from the Yadkin project. And if you start whittling off millions of gallons to that project, because they're not us doing it, but the Environmental Management Commission taking that away from us due to what the commitments we made to them, that's the problem. And again, if they say that, no, we're not going to hold you to those commitments, then it becomes a lot, no more easy of a decision, but it becomes a better decision for the future of the county. If they take it away from us, and the only thing we're doing is giving back to Mecklenburg and Lancaster counties what waters we're using from them at whatever the rate is, then we still haven't gained anything, because this is, all of a sudden, this 50-year plan becomes a lot less time. And we're planning on a long-term strategy. We could get that many gallons of water from, we can get it from Catawba, we can get it from PD River through the Anson County. There's a lot of places we can get 6, 7, 8 million gallons of water from. I just want to make sure that, again, the Environmental Management Commission knows we're not going to probably meet those growth projections that were made many years ago when things were going this way.
Well, I am sure that when the FERC permit comes and we start construction of the line, the adversaries out there of the Yadkin River project will do everything they can to get that number lowered. And we're here to work for the county, not against it.
I understand that, and I appreciate that, but it's not our decision or anybody local's decision to make. It's the Environmental Management Commission's decision to make.
Mr. Chairman, I happen to be on the board of the Lancaster Water. And, yeah, we do, I think, 3 million gallons we buy from them and on need. And that is based on their will to let us have it. We also, as you said, Shell, economists said that the county's going to grow. I think around 2,000, we were at 40,000 people. We're at 240,000 now because we were one of the fastest growing counties in the state. We'll continue to grow, and so that's a shell. We shall grow. And the problem is if we don't do something now, we're going to be in a situation we don't have enough water. So it's my great-great-grandchildren that we're taking actions here to ensure that they'll have a community that will thrive and have the water it needs. I think it was great, with great insight that we went down this path. And so I think we'll continue. I look forward to it coming into the county. As everyone knows, and I've gotten a number of calls recently talking about testing wells. And I found out, and I didn't know this, but I found out that if you're on county water, you want to go back to well, that's against the statute. And so a lot of these wells have contamination that's not good for our citizens. And so what we're doing with the Yadkin is ensuring that the future residents of Union County have safe drinking water. And I look forward to it coming to fruition.
We have a motion. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
I forget where we were. Takes us to item 29, new business, report of results for the 2020 Employee Climate Survey.
That's on the consent, isn't it?
Yeah, that was on consent. I put the 2 items you requested under old business. Not a problem, not a problem.
Good afternoon. It's always nice to come before the board to share good news, so I hope you're going to find the information that we're about to share on the Employee Climate Survey as encouraging as we found it. A couple of introductory remarks about the survey as reminders. The format that Union County uses is the Federal Employee Viewpoint Survey, and this is the second survey released following this format. The first was in 2018. The second was earlier this year. This is a validated survey tool that has been used by the federal government for over a decade that measures multiple climate areas and 4 specific indices for feedback. The survey is based on several topic areas that focus on employees' personal work experience, satisfaction on the job, work unit information, supervision on the job, organizational leadership, Union County as an organization, and also looks at work-life programming and demographic information. The Employee Climate Survey is conducted every other year, and at the completion of each survey, all response data is provided to third-party consultants to review, summarize, and prepare general recommendations based on survey outcomes. We use the outside consultants for several reasons. However, primarily is to have objective subject matter experts analyze the responses and validate any statistically significant findings. The first survey released in 2018 rendered overall positive results from county employees, and our goals with the second survey were to increase the participation rate in the survey, work to steadily improve in identified areas of opportunity, and maintain or improve in previously noted high-performing areas. I can share that all of these goals were met with the 2020 survey. With any survey, there will be areas of opportunity identified where work can continue for growth and improvement. Our survey results are extremely encouraging as a whole, and positive rating responses increased from 2018 to 2020. Dr. Chandlin and her colleague from Queens University completed the survey analysis and review again this year for Union County. Dr. Chandlin will be discussing the key survey results and recommendations with you today via GoToMeeting. You have been provided with a copy of the presentation slides that Dr. Chandlin will be covering, and will also be receiving the full survey report at the conclusion of this meeting from the clerk. First, we have a short introductory video from Dr. Chandlin, and then I'll be turning it over to her to go over the survey analysis.
Hello, Board of County Commissioners and other attendees. I'm Dr. Dawn Chandlin. I am the lead consultant on both the 2018 and 2020 Union County Climate Survey projects. My colleague, Dr. John Rapetti, and I conducted an independent analysis of the raw data provided to us from the participant base. We've analyzed it and generated a 60-page full report for the public and the board and staff members, and also a 25-page abridged version, executive summary, for folks who are interested in a shorter version. I would like to share with you first that the news is very good. It was good in 2018. At the time, Union County had a healthy climate. In 2020, it's even healthier. And that is very good news. In some cases, markedly so. And a lot of that credit really does go to the leadership in Union County. To give you an example of 2018 to 2020 in terms of growth, in 2018, 51 of 72 items on the survey showed up as strengths. And a strength is identified when at least 65% of the participants identify some element of the climate, be it work supervision, perceptions of senior leadership, of the work itself, as either positive or very positive. Now, fast forward to 2020, and 64 out of 72 items were also identified as a strength. So there was an increase of 13 items of climate that were then moved towards strength status. In both cases, there were no, quote, challenges, which would be essentially low ratings or negative perceptions of the climate in various ways. So there's just so much good news in this report. I will be, in the next 20 minutes, describing more about the survey itself, its validity, about the details of the conclusions that can be drawn from the data, and also a set of recommendations to guide future action. I, again, would say that the county leadership has been very impressive in the actions that it's taken since 2018. For one, I'm aware that there was a trust project undertaken that involved many of the county's leadership to educate leaders on how to develop stronger trust with the county and with their own direct reports and their perceptions of them as leaders. And it took an entire year of the county leadership's time to fulfill the promise in that project. And I think it really has shown in the results that we've seen here in 2020. I look forward to continuing the dialogue with you. I would also like to mention that Dr. John Rapetti has a PhD in analytics. He is a statistician by nature and a business analytics professor at Queens University, about 35 to 40 years of experience. I have 30 years of experience in academia and, quote, corporate America, and a doctorate in management, which is a broad umbrella of a number of topics, including leadership, climate/culture. And so I think you can feel very confident that the data were handled with great care and that the conclusions that we can draw here are valid and that the recommendations come from someone, namely me, who has seen many of these surveys and has helped companies think through how to move forward with the results. This is great news.
And we're going to transition to with Dr. Chandler live, so she can go through her analysis, and then you'll have an opportunity to ask questions at the end of her presentation as well.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. I believe I'm being muted in the background, wonderful. First, I'd like to say to all of the employees in attendance and the board that I'd like to thank you for your service to our community, and I'm also very pleased to be the bearer of good news for the day. As Julie aptly introduced us to the survey, we have used the FEV survey with some encouraging results. And as an introductory statement, once again, to say that in 2018, there was a healthy climate, and in 2020, there's even a healthier climate. You'll see that there were gains made in a number of key areas, and the leadership, I really believe, was laudable in its efforts to enhance the climate over this time. Now, FEVS, as Julie described, has been used by many federal agencies over the last decade. Just in 2019 alone, over 600,000 employees took this. So, and it is a valid measure. When I've looked at a lot of climate surveys, I think this one's incredibly thorough and thoughtful. And so when Union County presented it as the tool of choice, I was actually very pleased, because I think you could consider it to be a good way to get at the essential climate features. In addition, it's a good indicator of how close you are to being a best workplace. And I think what we can see is that Union County is a good place to work and can continue in its growth, to point to Julie's comment. At the same time, I think this is also cause, frankly, for celebration. There was a lot of work that I know went into this, and everyone should feel very proud about the progress made. So let me share a bit of the conclusions here. And I'd like to start by saying what I'm showing you here is the value of employee engagement. When you are looking at climate surveys, you're also getting a rough estimate of how engaged employees are. On the left-hand side, you can see that organizations that typically are leaders, that is, they are high engagement organizations, tend to have very strong profitability, whereas, quote, laggards with low engagement tend to be far less profitable. Arguably, it's important to have engagement in and unto itself as a healthy employer for employees. In addition, the engagement levels are very important predictors of performance, retention, and in your case, the ability to serve the public with high quality services. Okay. So briefly, and please keep in mind, Julie mentioned that the entire 60-page report and the abridged version will be made available shortly. So I'm going to keep my remarks sort of high level for you. I'm going to offer you a snapshot, comparisons between 2018 and 2020, both at times within Union County, so the results 2018 versus now, and also Union County relative to the average employer or government agency that took this vis-a-vis the federal government. So the broader results that have been gathered from this last year. And we'll talk about key strengths, areas for development, and I'll make some recommendations going forward. Now, notably, one thing to notice here in the left-hand column, this is just a snapshot of who took this. And to Julie's comment, the participation rate increased to 74%. That is a very, very healthy figure. Before it was healthy at 65%. And I think Union County, for lack of a better term, went gangbusters to get as many people to realize they could take this, it's available to them, they could share their perspectives. And so the participation rate jumped. Notably, by comparison, the average agency this past year when folks took it was in the low 40s. So that should tell you something just about the fact that it was communicated that this existed and was a possibility. Notably, again, 51 out of the 72 items in 2018 were considered to be strengths. Now, in 2020, 64 of those 72 items are strengths. No challenges, that is overly low with negative perspectives. And if you notice, the 10 lowest positive scores in 2018 started at a low of 48%, viewing a feature of the climate positively. That has subsequently jumped for essentially all 10 items up 6 points. It's not easy to do that. Climate is not easy to change. And so once again, a reason to laud the moment. Here are some of the lowest percentage positives. Pardon me one second. Right here. I'm not going to go into these in great detail because once again, the entire survey can offer you each item and its score. But what I'd like to bring to your perspective or your attention is this idea that on the right-hand column, the lowest item, promotions in my work unit are based on performance or merit, was at 48%, and then went higher as we move down the right-hand column. In 2020, the lowest percentage positive in my work unit, differences in performance are recognized in a meaningful way, started at 56. Again, much higher this time around. Okay, now your highest positive numbers, very, very high. So if you look, when needed, I'm willing to put in the extra effort to get a job done. The work I do is important, and I'm constantly looking for ways to do my job better. These, I will say, are fairly consistent with the generalized results within the federal government. Nonetheless, it's a good thing when you're seeing these kinds of numbers, when people feel that they're willing to put in the time to do their work and they believe their work is important. That is a good predictor of how people are feeling when they come to work every day. Now, this is something that I was very excited to see, frankly, in knowing many of the county senior leadership members. The 4 highest, you are seeing the most improved items between 2018 and 2020. The number one is I have a high level of respect for Union County's senior management. Number 2, creativity and innovation are recognized. Number 3, also a sign of recognition. And number 4, points one more time to senior management. So if you look over here on the right, arguably the 4 areas that collectively had the most notable improvement were increases in satisfaction with senior management, which could be a function of a number of different things, including there was a restructure conducted and also just a lot of effort and thinking on the part of senior leadership to really utilize the 2018 results as something meaningful and work to make change. Number 2, strengthen performance management scores. Number 3, improved personnel diversity and equity perceptions. And number 4, enhanced perceptions of recognition. I would like to note that number 3, diversity and equity perceptions, they are higher, and that is something that should be recognized as an area of improvement. You will see later in the presentation that there will still be areas that can be improved going forward. Okay, notably, there were only 4 items that declined out of 72. That is very, very healthy. And I would even like to say that these are minor declines. They went down 1%. And if I were a leader myself within Union County, I would pay attention to them and think, how can we pull these up? They are not cause for alarm. The highest decrease between 2018 and 20 was how satisfied are you with your pay? And that may in part be an artifact of the fact that in 2018, when the survey was originally administered, there was a compensation project underway, and so a number of people were experiencing possible increases in their pay. So it may be a fact of that temporary elevated sense of, oh, I just got a pay raise, versus more negative feelings around pay in 2020. It's hard to say, frankly, and but I think that that could absolutely have been part of this, and maybe even a lot of predicting this. Nonetheless, it's important at all times for any employer to be very careful about pay because it is such a strong predictor of people's satisfaction and their likelihood of staying with an employer. Okay, so there were 2 items that were included in the Union County surveys that were not included in the Fed survey. And that is, there were very, very few modifications made between FEVS and Union County. However, there were two that were more specifically for Union County. So for example, one of them had to do with training perception. The team that spawned the project decided it wanted to know, how are we doing with training and perceptions of learning and development opportunities? And they view them very positively. So notably, out of 67 out of 70 items that would be relevant for comparison, Union County scores higher than the overall government results. There were improvements in positive perceptions between 2018 and 2020 on 62 of 72 items. So when you're trying to look at, are we moving more positively, you got a good jump on a bunch of them, notably most all of them. In addition, we did a separate analysis on negative perception. So the fairly small group that said, we don't like this, we view it negatively, or we're very dissatisfied with something. So we did a separate analysis, and those, in general, on the items, the negative side has moved toward neutrality or positive as well. Okay, now in comparing change, I did a separate analysis so that Union County would have a sense of how are we doing in terms of improvement gains relative to the rest of the government who participates in this. And to be honest, there may be a bias that better employers in the federal government that take valuing their employees seriously are participating here. So I wanted to see how are we doing as a county in growth relative to FEVS overall. So when you look at that, on over half of the items, 46 of 72, Union County between 2018 and 2020 made higher gains than did everybody else, for lack of a better term. And by the way, in a number of cases, there were significant increases. I mean, very impressive increases made. There's little likelihood that anything would be due to chance in that case. Along 6 items, FEVS and Union County are tracking generally about the same. And then along 18 items, FEVS, and I would say slightly outpaces the positive stride in terms of movement. Just as a framework, most of these items generally move up 1, maybe 2 each year. So to give you an example, think earlier to the 10 and 11 points that were gained in a number of climate areas. And celebration. Okay, 2 items, as I noted, were not applicable to analysis in this case. Among the items where FEVS does outpace Union County increases, and that doesn't mean that Union County isn't increasing, right? These are very good results. However, where FEVS is outpacing Union County, most of those relate to perceived supervisor behaviors that could enhance non-supervisors' engagement. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. Okay, here are the 4 primary indices that FEVS create. So we recreated them in 2018 and 2020 for Union County. What I'd like to draw your attention to is that Union County has experienced, if you look in the far right-hand column, that you've experienced gains in all 4 of them. 3 points, 1 point, 4 points, 3 points. Those are good gains. In addition, if you look at Union County relative to the rest of the group, and this is, remember, hundreds of thousands of employees, we are at, Union County is at 10, 11, and 8 points higher on the primary indices. And in 2020, FEVS on the whole did not generate an HCAAF index, which is the only reason why we can't draw a comparison. In addition, smartly, the climate survey included some questions about the desirability of work-life programs. The rankings included, so people were asked to rank all of these items in terms of importance. And I will just speak to the top 3, given the final report will be distributed shortly. The most desired 3 were to have a floating holiday or birthday off, paid maternal and paternal leave, or paid short-term disability options, and paid hours for voluntary community activities. Now, in terms of satisfaction with some of the existing benefits that Union County offers. You can see to the right the level of satisfaction here. What I would also like to point to is that this does not mean, if you're at 61, it doesn't mean that people aren't satisfied. Included in the items was essentially a not applicable or didn't use the service. So a number of people just didn't use the service, but people are experiencing satisfaction when they're taking advantage of these opportunities. The highest one, again, notably, is the Employee Expo event. Okay, now here is where I'd like to jump into the climate development areas, and I'll move through these relatively quickly to get to my recommendations. Number one is that if you tease out supervisors versus non-supervisors, so you could be talking about 100 people versus 600 people in comparison, the items for the scores for non-supervisors are lower, with an average of 5 points lower. In some respect, that doesn't surprise me because there's something about the way the jobs are constructed at a senior level that inherently can feel more motivating. At the same time, it's an area where I know undoubtedly Union County, given its seriousness as an employer, will want to continue to develop. So the 4 declined items obviously are an area for development. Once again, they were small and not cause for alarm. In a few cases, there were some modest results on items, and I would say that could be an area of attention for further invigorating development in those areas. And even though there was a jump on performance management items, they were still relatively lower than some of the other ones. So I would recommend continued emphasis in that way, as I'll talk about shortly. Now, I got very excited, I would say, as, I don't know, a competitor in life. And as I was going through all of these results, wow, you know, Union County is doing an excellent job vis-a-vis most of these entities. So I took a very close look at 16, 17, it depended on which category it was, of medium-sized organizations that had taken this, and Union County scored outscored almost all of them. The 2 that it didn't beat, we'll say, were the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission and the Federal Trade Commission. So you can see their areas versus Union County's. It's close, but I think you might use them as a benchmark for growth going forward. So in the area of intrinsic work experience, there was no improvement on this when you aggregate these into an index. And so that is an area also for improvement that I think could readily be addressed. So as one example, number 12, I know how my work relates to the agency's goals and priorities. Given that senior management has been working to communicate throughout Union County, that could be an area that I think fairly easily could be enhanced. Okay, with diversity and inclusion, there were strides made. However, if you look at global satisfaction among different groups, be it supervisors versus non-supervisors, individuals who identify as straight versus as LGBTQ, white versus Hispanic, there are some groups that are not experiencing Union County quite as positively as others. So that's going to be an area for targeting. Now, recommendations. Once again, I will try to be brief so that I can keep open the floor to any questions that you might have. So I have 9 recommendations. One is that you either choose to administer yearly said surveys or these every other year. I think I would say you could be very comfortable if you did it every other year, given the amount of work that actually goes into that. It is, I think, a really good opportunity for Union County that has been impressive in its undertaking, and I think that should really continue, because what I would say in all of this is, as somebody who's very well schooled in organizational change and has helped organizations in their journey to change, you're in a pretty far path along making these improvements what they call stick. So making these changes stick, so you're just a better, healthier workplace. At the end of the process, sometimes organizations let up and they call the win prematurely. So it's really going to be important that you continue to keep your eye on the ball and keep things moving. Second, I would suggest establishing a climate vision and plan and an accompanying on an annual basis, and really set up a clear plan where you have goals, a vision statement for the climate, targeted strategies, ownership of the process, and checkpoints along the way, so that this is something that you're talking about frequently, and that's going to be what will allow you to, again, continue to improve. I would recommend that you pursue best workplace designations. In my review of all this, I was looking at best workplace designations, and I really think that Union County should be going for those so that you can aptly market that in your efforts to showcase the county as a place to live, work, and be. Continue to leverage Union County leadership, development, organizational capability strength. So a little bit of a mouthful. What I'm trying to say there is Union County invests a lot in talent development and leadership development, and I think it's really a strength of yours. I would recommend that you continue to do that, particularly, for example, in developing programs for supervisors with their efforts with their direct reports, and you might even spawn, for example, a program for high potentials who are not currently managing, but who are nominated or self-nominate for participation. Leverage HR and to communicate policies and existing benefits and strongly consider new benefits. The contemporary workplace is considering parental leave programs, short-term disability, and so I'm not surprised to see folks clamoring for that. And so that's the kind of thing that you might consider implementing over time. In addition, I had a really nice conversation at the end of this with HR about how it's important for people to know what their benefits are. And Union County offers a number of attractive benefits that they probably just need to continue to communicate to people so they realize really what they're getting. Because a lot of organizations don't really know what they're getting, and Union County does offer quite a bit. So just continue to communicate. Another would be to evaluate the human resources team capacity. I think if you continue on your path with these development efforts and even try to go a bit deeper into the organization for leadership development, you may find that, for example, hiring a part-time staff member to help with some of that administrative workload would be a strong return on investment. Evaluate compensation guidelines to consider possible COLA and merit considerations. I'll be brief in that compensation is always a big issue. It is a big predictor of turnover and overall engagement and satisfaction. And if you offer merit raises that only track inflation, people will simply see it as a way to track inflation. So you simply might look at every other year how many years you think is necessary to go out. The possibility of doing both COLA and merit considerations to the degree that you think that's a possibility. Okay, the last two. One would be to implement a broader equal opportunity policy and anti-discrimination statement. Because of the need for consideration of diversity and inclusion across different groups. So you might look at policies of neighboring counties to see how you can frame the wording as inclusively as possible. And then lastly would be to create a countywide strategic plan. Those efforts may be underfoot and just haven't been unveiled yet, and or they're packaged in a particular way. So that may be happening. I've raised that because I know how serious senior management has been about communicating its strategic efforts in the past, and I think that's been very helpful. And people will more readily see how their work has meaning and purpose and where they fit into the big picture when they see the strategic document and it's communicated broadly, widely through all layers of management. And will frankly heighten engagement just by knowing they matter and here is how. It may well be that that's afoot, and just want to mention that you could expect enhanced engagement on that. So as I end my presentation, I would like to give a little bit of a nod on this idea of return on investment of employee engagement, that what's really important is that you align employee engagement with the county's strategic aims and priorities. And that's when you really see that people are working toward what the county aims to fulfill for its populace. Oops, excuse me. And then lastly, here are just some strategic questions. How will engagement help the organization meet its objectives? How can we compete for top talent? And I think you can do that very readily, in part by further marketing how healthy the climate is. How can we ensure we have a pipeline for retirement? Most government organizations right now are facing pipeline shortages, and people are going to be ready, baby boomers will be ready to retire, and leadership development efforts and an engaged populace will be better able to fulfill those key roles. And how can engagement allow us to provide high-quality services to residents? Again, I would say that's a function of really communicating with employees about where their role fits within the strategic plan designated by leadership. So with that in mind, I'd like to offer, as I take questions, if you can still see me, a symbolic cheers to you. I'm standing here, I have my champagne ready, because I do think that this is really an opportunity for celebration of a lot of hard work. And as an employee consultant who looks at these things, I really think you should feel very proud.
Questions for Dr. Chandler?
Yes. And let me turn this back over. Yes.
I think the policy here won't let us have any champagne glasses, but we'll toast anyway.
Mr.
Questions? Anybody want to? Commissioner Helms has a
Yes.
question.
I'd like to know, does the survey give a breakdown for individual supervisors so they can focus on if they individually have a weakness within their group?
Do you want me to take that, Dawn?
Julie, I think you might want to take that one. Would you care to?
I will. We don't break it down for individual supervisors, but we do by division. So each division director, if they had a certain number of responses, did receive an individual report so that they can work on any weaknesses, work on strengths, continue to work on strengths and so forth for their specific divisions.
My question, our divisions are rather large. So how do you work down to the individual group to find out where you've got a problem that might be driving this?
Well, they can always do follow-up surveys. They do have a tool that's available to them currently where they can do follow-up surveys that are mini surveys to drill into certain areas if they want to. They also received specific advice from a separate consultant that did the division reports that gave them some ideas about how they could address any areas of weakness that they had in their divisions.
Julie, what was the minimum number of responses?
When the time's ready, I'll add a comment to that as well.
Okay.
The minimum number of responses before a division report was produced?
12 or more responses produced a
And
division
in
report.
2018, it was
15.
15, so we lowered the
Yes.
number in order to capture some more and be able to provide some more information down to smaller departments.
And Dawn, go ahead if you want to jump in.
If I might add, if I could quickly add something, I'm sorry, I'm having a little bit of trouble hearing. That's a very good question. It's important in climate surveys to obscure to some extent the lower level bodies in an organization, because otherwise people will not fill out a survey or they will fear their identities being disclosed, for better or worse. So the county smartly chunked it out the way that it did. I also know that at the division level, the division heads took these results very seriously and cascaded their efforts down the organization.
Thank you, Dawn.
Commissioner Rushing has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you tell me why we're asking sexual orientation and whether or not our employees are transgender? It seems an odd question when we would get the overall global satisfaction. Why would we break those folks out? Because as you were saying about the identifiers, I'm sure we probably don't have very many transgender employees, but if we do, if they're showing a 10% or 20% satisfaction rate, wouldn't that target those people for retaliation from their supervisors? Or, again, what would those numbers be if they were lumped in with the global satisfaction?
Did you hear that, Dawn?
Julie, could you repeat that? I get the essence of it, but I want to make sure I offer a targeted response.
Okay.
We're asking sexual orientation, and we're asking gender for transgender or chose not to answer. Those
Yeah.
numbers are lower and indicating we need some type of improvement there, but why are we asking those questions? Why would we not just lump those in with everybody else? Because especially the transgender, I can see that being something that if a supervisor has a transgender employee that's not satisfied with their job, they're going to be looked at. And again, it's like if you said how many Alaskan Eskimo people do we have here? You're really separating
Yeah.
something out there that I don't understand why we separate that out.
And can I start off with that, Dawn, to answer, and then
Yeah,
you can
please,
jump
Julie,
in?
go ahead.
Just to clarify, for the demographic information, that's only included in the organization-wide reporting. We don't split that out for the division reporting, so the divisions aren't receiving demographic information in those smaller reports. That's only lumped into those organization-wide results. And then secondly, that's included in the FEV survey, and that's the reason that we've kept that same format for the demographic information to include those same categories that the FEV survey uses. Beyond that, I know Dawn's got some insight on that she can share as well.
Do you know if that moves that global satisfaction number any?
If the demographic information moves,
For example, does it go from 81 to 80, or does it go from 81 to 75?
and Dawn can probably speak to that. He's asking about the global satisfaction indice,
Yeah.
if-
Uh-huh.
if that's driven at all.
And so, yeah, my screen is not allowing me to see that there. If he's asking, so again, bear with me, the global satisfaction for LGBTQ employees is lower, fairly substantively so. And that is, to Julie's comment, it is still, the number of respondents was sufficiently large to make a comparison, and people were still comfortable sharing that information anonymously, and it was aggregate at the county level versus being broken out. It is if you want to call it, contemporary addition to climate surveys as a way to figure out whether people are bringing their best selves to work and themselves to work, because we know that engaged employees feel like they can bring their whole selves to work. And so my sense would be that you wouldn't have people being honest about it if they didn't feel they could share that with the county, their orientation. And I'm so sorry, perhaps somebody can text me the full question if I'm missing it. But it is something that's usually used and included in these surveys. It is just not broken out to a very low level, because I think perhaps to the respondent's question, somebody's identity may become known when they don't want it to be. But at the Union County level, it's sufficiently obscured.
And so we're not asking that on hiring documents.
No,
Thank you.
no. Any other questions or comments?
Thank you, Dr. Chandler. Thank you, Julie.
Thank you.
Excellent work.
Thank you, Dawn.
Thank you to everybody. Best wishes and congratulations on a win when it's nice to have wins. Take care.
Thank you.
Mr. Manager.
Mr. Chairman, I have three things to share with the board this afternoon. One, a reminder that we have a budget workshop scheduled for this Wednesday, May the 20th, beginning at 9 a.m. It's scheduled to last until noon in the Human Resource Training Room. We have a number of items to update the board on regarding the budget development, and what you can look forward to in the manager's recommendation. Secondly, this week we have experienced some concerns on the part of some of our public works customers in the that are supplied by Catawba River water. And those concerns mainly are generated around the taste and odor issues that they haven't experienced in the past. Our staff immediately, upon learning that there were these issues, began additional water sampling to determine if we could determine if it was a distribution related issue. We found that it was not a distribution system related issue. We also determined that there was nothing, no unhealthy factors in the water. It did have an odor, and it did have a different taste. After taking several samples, many samples in fact, at our water plant, we determined that the cause of the odor and the taste issues were coming from the water plant, specifically the new water reservoir, which has experienced an algae bloom, which we have, as you remember, we just opened the reservoir. This is the first warm weather season that we would be using that reservoir, and we've had this algae bloom to occur, which causes the taste and odor issues. We're very well aware of the concerns in the community amongst the customers. Many of them called our customer service department and customer service lines. We heard from many of them online. We certainly understand the level of concern. Staff made every effort to communicate what steps we were taking in order to determine the cause. And this past Friday, we were able to produce a letter, an email, and online responses to our customers to let them know the exact cause and what was going on with the water and what steps we were taking in order to mitigate the algae bloom. The number of phone calls has significantly decreased today, and along with the number of emails, et cetera, that we've been getting. So we've made every effort to get the word out with factual and up-to-date information. The only thing that prohibited us from doing that in the first day or two was the fact that the water samples had to be made, and it took time to culture those and get those reports back. So, let you know what was going on there. The third thing I'd like to mention tonight on the consent agenda, I thought was a very important item, a milestone, if you will, because it was about this time last year that the board was discussing the short line extension program in the county. Had just made some fairly significant funding changes to the short line extension program, and we're learning of several concerns that specific areas areas in our county had and specific residents. But on the agenda tonight was the approval of the construction contract for the Pinewood Forest project. The engineer's estimate was that project would cost somewhere in the neighborhood of $450,000. The bid came in and was awarded at $260,000, $190,000 difference between what was projected and what came in on bids. I think that's good news all the way around. That project construction will start very soon. And with that, I wish y'all all a good evening.
Sir, Mr. Helms.
Yes, I I'd like to congratulate staff on the improving employee satisfaction. It takes significant work to make that kind of improvements, and y'all did a good job. Thank you. Also, I'd like to express my appreciation for Crime Stoppers. Starting this morning at about 9:30, Crime Stoppers Board of Directors and myself handed out over 400 meals to law enforcement. All the law enforcement officers in Union County were included. This afternoon, between 4 and 6, expect another 150 meals to be handed out. And in particular, I'd like to recognize Reed Helms for his organization and push for this, and also Spiro's Hilltop for their contribution and making it happen. It was interesting. We had, sometime in 15 minutes, we'd have 100 people show up, or 100 meals were taken. So we appreciate Crime Stoppers and what they do for our community, and especially thank our law enforcement community for all they do 365 days a year. Thank you.
Mr. Rowe?
Well, Mark sort of stole one of my thunders, but on the Pinewood Forest Drive in Plainview Road, I certainly hope that's an indicator of what's to come. That's about $65 a foot to put line in. And of course, since we've designated so much money per year, if it comes in under estimates, we'll be able to do more lines. And that's been one of the big commitments of this board. And another thing that wasn't on the agenda, but I did hear it, and I think it was Merritt's talking about, I heard that our Register of Deeds, Crystal Gilliard, had a big, more than normal influx of business. And I realize when revenue goes up, it takes more work to do that. And we appreciate all you do. You know, you're one of those things, when everything goes right, nobody really hears anything about it. So, and a lot of departments are that way if everything goes right. So certainly appreciate all y'all do down there.
Mr. Rushing?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll just ask everybody to be having your thoughts and prayers, all the families affected by the pandemic and the business owners. This is a trying time for families. We saw this weekend where part of Governor Cooper's stay-at-home order and prohibition of churches meeting was struck down. So hopefully that Governor Cooper will see fit to follow the leads of governors in other states surrounding North Carolina and let those folks get back to work and let our economy get flowing again. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Akins?
I would just echo what Commissioner Rushing said. I'm glad to see our county offices back open and certainly not operating quite the way they were in the past, but starting to see some semblance of normalcy. So proud of that, and I hope that, like Commissioner Rushing said, Governor Cooper will take notice of the states surrounding us. I can tell you I was in South Carolina over the weekend, and they are certainly open for business. Folks are certainly exhibiting social distancing and acting appropriately, and so I hope that we have the opportunity, as our license plate says, we were first in freedom, but I think right now South Carolina's got us beat.
I have no further comments. I'll offer a motion to adjourn. All in favor, say aye. Aye.